so this tutorial is going to talk about anchor points in After Effects. And so I want to talk about that just because I feel like that was a source of confusion for myself when I was first getting into After Effects, and I think can be a source of confusion for others as well, especially when you start animating properties or using presets. A lot of the animation presets use the anchor point to control kind of how the animation is being applied to your graphics. And so I'm going to create an ellipse here. And if I hold down Shift, it'll create a perfect circle for me. And I'm going to go back to the selection tool so I can move this around a little bit. Okay, so I have my circle here, and then you can see this over here is my anchor point. And so the anchor point is basically like when you rotate an image or graphics, it will rotate around your anchor point. So it's kind of like the center point. And so if I go into my shape layer and I find my ellipse, and actually I'm gonna just go to transform, and I'm gonna go to rotation, I can see that this ellipse rotates around my anchor point. And so for a lot of different effects, you might want that anchor point. Like let's say you want that circle to, actually, I'm gonna change the shape of this so we can actually see it move. But let's say you want that, ellipse to be rotating just in its place. In order to do that, we need to move the anchor point to the center of the ellipse. And so one way to do that is use the pan behind tool. If I click that, then I can go and I can move my anchor point and to the center of that. And then if I rotate the ellipse, it rotates in place. Another way to do that is if you hold down the command key and double click the pan behind, it'll automatically center in the shape. And a third way to do that is if you go into your After Effects preferences and click on General. This might just take a second here. My computer has a lot of things going on. You can select Center Anchor Point in New Shape Layer. So every time you create a new shape layer, it will automatically put that anchor point in the center of that layer. So I'm not going to do that in mine, but that's an option. And so one thing to think about is that the anchor point is connected to the layer. And so we actually have two anchor points here. And so we have an anchor point for the shape, which is already for the ellipse. If we move that anchor point, or if we rotate that within the ellipse transform options, the anchor point is already centered there. So if you have multiple shapes on a layer, then it is possible to animate those all around their own anchor point using that option. The general transform of the layer is the anchor point for the entire layer. So if we tried to move it with our coordinates over here, it would just move the layer, and we would have to move it to center over the anchor point basically. But we don't want to do that. But we want to use the pan behind tool if that's what we want to do. But it is important to know that you do have separate anchor points. You have an anchor point for the entire layer, and then you have anchor points for all the shapes on the layer. And so when you add animation presets or you're doing any edits like that, it's good to know that what they're being applied to and how they're working with the anchor points of that layer. And that's it for anchor points.